how to plan our work, our free time. This is Al Fritsch, and we are in a series called How To's. And so maybe we could talk about planning how we live. You know, our life is a gift, our time is a gift, and it isn't something we can idle away. Now, when you get as old as I am, they consider you to be retired and therefore more emphasis on the free time than on the work. But I don't agree with that. Because if you really enjoy what you're doing, that's the best retirement you can have, is to do it. But to do it in some way in which you show that you are very responsible in the amount of time we have, because it's going down, down, down. There's a lot less of it when you get older. And therefore we have to plan it well, but I think that applies to everyone. In fact, I am a compulsive planner. But when I look back, it wasn't something I had developed over time so much as it was when I was back in college and had to spend a lot of time on certain studies that I found hard to really digest and get. So I had to spend more time than some others did. And so therefore you had to plan it well or it simply would run out, especially if you were trying to do outside work at the same time or overload yourself with more courses than what was needed. And so really it was my opportunity to begin planning, which I have continued all my life. And you'd say, well, how do you start? And the first thing is with a planner. Don't think of this, but there are those books that are out there. They don't have to be what you take. You can use your own ingenuity here, but still you have to put it down. In other words, it has to be put down in some way that it's not just a vague idea you have, but that you put your plans in some way that it can be seen and read and referred to. Now, that brings us up to, well, how concise are we? Well, some people just are very vague. They don't even know what they're going to do tomorrow. And that's a strange world in which I find to live in. Why shouldn't we have that little bit of extra time we've got, use it well, use it for the best that we can do, and therefore planning for it. Now there's really drawbacks to planning, and we have to face that. People who overplan can sometimes become quite rigid, and therefore tensions build up, and we don't want that to happen. I would really say that there are some people that just simply won't or shouldn't plan. And therefore, they didn't come to this site to start with. But if you did, and if you're a planner, then maybe I can give a hint or two that you can remember. And one is, be very flexible in your planning. In other words, give a little extra time for everything, so that when you actually succeed in doing it in less time, well, you feel good. You got some extra free time. So when we plan, we don't want that unwelcome tension, and at the same time we don't want to be so laid back that nothing gets planned. So somewhere in between is what we've got to do. And therefore, do not regard planning as something that, well, at the beginning of the year, and that's it. In fact, I think there should be annual plans and monthly plans and weekly plans, and daily plans. Does it mean that you spend a lot of time planning? The answer is yes. If you actually spend a tenth of your time planning, you'd be in good shape. Because we've got to think ahead. And many times mistakes are made because we simply didn't remember to do this or that before it occurs. Let's be realistic. Only part of the plan will ever be the project will ever be completed in the way the original one was set. Now, if you're going to write some essay, well, it'll turn out different from what you started, and that's okay. So therefore, there's not only the flexibility in the amount of time we use, but flexibility in the content of what we're trying to do. And therefore, when we go back again and again to months or weeks or days, we can make these changes and welcome them. Why should we do what we thought we should do a year ago and we've actually improved ourselves and understand the situation far better than we did then, and therefore we should welcome. But it was because we planned then that we're able to do what we're doing now. Except that plans then should be modified. They can be modified in various ways, and it's always could be for the better. Remember again, we are not the owners of our time. God is. We want to do what the Lord wills us to do. Wants us to do this or that. That means that, well, if we had to relive a life, we would have cut out a lot that we thought was, well, it didn't get really accomplished what we originally thought. And we could have shortcutted all that. But really, that was part of who we are. And that was part of the process. So our plans, though not completed in the way in which we originally meant, they are over time completed if we're doing God's will. Thinking again, God has given us so much time. I'm at an age that's past when the average American white male lives. Now you would say, well, you have a lot of extra time, don't you? I said, no, it's just allotted more to me, and therefore my responsibility is just as great as when I was younger or at other times. It's a responsibility, but not a bearing one of guilt or something, but rather one in which, well, we're happy about it. And that brings us to another point. Enjoy what you're doing. You shouldn't do it if you can't enjoy it. And unfortunately, I think about half the world enjoys what they're doing, the other half doesn't. And I think if you're one on the non-enjoyable side of things, well, think ahead. Plan well. Talk to those who have sort of other responsibilities that push you to do what you're doing, and try to reallot yourself in some way. We should enjoy what the Lord's given us. It's only so much time we've got. It flees so fast. Why not do it and use it in the best way possible, and really at the end of each day say, thank you, Lord, for letting me live through this day, complete the work that I've got to do, and prepare for what I've got to do tomorrow. So that brings us to another thing. Are we allowed free time? Of course. Not only the extra time that it didn't take to do the job, and therefore we have that extra, but also we're allowed to plan for free time. Now people will say, you never do that. And I say, that's not true. If you look on my planners, it's usually an FT, means free time, and it's put down at various places. Now you don't do anything? No, I didn't say that. Free time doesn't necessarily mean that you just sit there blank. No, you have to plan for what you're going to do, and sometimes in free time. Other times you don't. In some of the most enjoyable times is when we didn't plan for the free time. But we gave it an allotment, and therefore it was really within the planned context, but not necessarily what was going to be the content within it. So I'm saying that it sounds almost contradictory. You mean you do your work and you're doing a lot of planning, and then your free time you're not planning. I said, no, it's not quite true. We plan the presence of free time, and when it comes. But that brings us to another thing. Emergencies occur in our world. They come up all the time. I'll tell you, funerals are the greatest emergency, but sickness is another from other people who you're trying to serve, and you have to be ready for being able to handle this without being tense about it. It's going to happen. That's part of what the opportunity we have to live, and we accept. And therefore plans get broken. That's why we keep replanning, only because they get broken quite often. And therefore we have to make sure that the overall plans of what we're going to do for the year can be done, but we have that flexibility within our year, our period of time, in which when emergencies arise, they're handled well. Well, then there's the other question comes up. Well, you didn't plan your own death, did you? No, I didn't do that. What about sicknesses that might come? Well, it's easier when you're in good health to talk about planning. That's true. But even when we're sick, we can plan to offer things up, because that is a time when we can do immensely great work. It's just different work from what we originally planned. We can offer things up for other people, and that's a powerful way of doing work for the sick and the shut-in. And we should tell people that. It's not worthless, their time. Their time can be well spent by praying for others, thinking about them, offering it up with the Lord. And so therefore planning can have a very spiritual aspect to it. And therefore it should, because really we're not the owners of our life or our time. God owns it. We're just renting, and we're hoping that we do it with a smile and really enjoy it, because that's what God wants us to do. So let's consider that, well, life might include, beyond the plans that we have here, alternatives that we never thought of. True. And that enters into planning too, because we have to have an even mind in what we're doing, knowing that tomorrow may bring on something so totally different that what we had planned for tomorrow cannot possibly be done. We accept it. It's part of our life, part of the way we live. But we can plan for what is anticipated and which will most likely happen tomorrow. Let's think about that. Now, if you're a non-planner, well, turn this off. But if you're a planner, then think about it in this way. Our life is worth something. Our life has been given to us. Our life is something we can try to use the best way we can. That's why we can plan for our work and also for our free time. This is Al Fritsch from earthhealing.info. Happy that you've come. Make your comments. I'd love to hear about what you think about planning. It might be quite different. But anyway, think about it. Plan about it.